Okay, so imagine you apply for government benefits. You fill out every form, you submit every document, you wait. And then you get a letter, denied. No explanation, no human signature, no appeal process that actually works, just a decision made by a machine that nobody, not even the agency, fully understands. You'd think that's a dystopian movie plot, right? Except it's not. It happened in the Netherlands. It happened in Australia. It happened in the United States, repeatedly. In some of these cases, people lost their homes, their children were taken by the state, and at least one government was forced to resign over it. And here's the part that genuinely messes with your head. Most of the governments running these systems didn't just make mistakes. They knew the systems were producing errors, and they kept running them anyway. So today, we walk through exactly how AI took over government decision-making, what happened when it went wrong, the science of why these systems fail, and why the people most harmed are almost never the people who designed them. This one's going to make you genuinely angry, but you need to know it. Let's go. It didn't happen overnight. It crept in. It started with efficiency arguments. Governments deal with millions of decisions every year: tax filings, welfare applications, visa requests, parole hearings, child welfare assessments. The pitch was compelling. Algorithms are consistent. They don't have bad days. They don't have unconscious bias. They process 10,000 applications in the time it takes a human to process 10. That pitch turned out to be, at best, deeply incomplete, and at worst, catastrophically wrong. Here's what the science actually says. Machine learning systems are trained on historical data, and historical data contains historical bias. If your criminal risk tool is trained on decades of arrest records from a system that over-policed black neighborhoods, the tool doesn't learn to be fair, it learns to replicate the pattern, efficiently, at scale, with the appearance of mathematical objectivity. The United States commissioned an audit of one of the most widely used criminal risk assessment tools, COMPAS, used in parole and sentencing decisions across multiple states. ProPublica's 2016 investigation found that COMPAS incorrectly flagged black defendants as future criminals at nearly twice the rate of white defendants. The company behind COMPAS, Northpoint, disputed the methodology. The tool kept being used. Before we go further, drop a comment below. Have you or anyone you know ever been denied a service, benefit, or opportunity by an automated system with no explanation? Yes or no? Because the numbers on this are going to surprise you. This is what researchers call algorithmic bias, and it's not a bug. It's a feature of how these systems are built. So now you know how these systems got in. Next, what happened when they started producing catastrophic results? And what the governments running them actually did about it. Okay, here's where the story gets genuinely dark. Because the COMPAS story is just the tip of the iceberg. What governments did when their AI systems started producing catastrophic errors is, honestly, worse than the errors themselves. Let's start with Australia. In 2016, the Australian government launched what it called the Online Compliance Intervention System, quickly nicknamed Robodebt. The system automatically cross-referenced welfare recipient income data against tax records and issued debt notices to people it calculated had been overpaid. The algorithm used averaging. It took annual income figures and divided them evenly across the year, ignoring that people's income fluctuates. Seasonal workers, people who changed jobs, people who had a good few months, all flagged as fraudsters. The system issued approximately 470,000 incorrect debt notices. People received letters demanding repayment of thousands of dollars they did not owe. Some received threatening debt collection calls. Some lost housing. Welfare advocates linked the scheme to suicides among recipients who received false debt notices. The Australian government knew the system was producing errors by 2017. They kept it running until 2019. It took a class action lawsuit, a Senate inquiry, and a royal commission to fully expose the scale of the failure. The Royal Commission's final report, released in 2023, found that senior government officials had knowingly continued a scheme they understood to be legally and ethically indefensible. Now, the Netherlands. In 2019, Dutch investigative journalists revealed the Netherlands Tax Authority had been using an AI fraud detection system that disproportionately flagged families with dual nationalities, effectively immigrant families, as high risk. Approximately 26,000 families were incorrectly accused of fraud. They were forced to repay child benefit payments, some going years without income. Families were destroyed. Children were taken into care because parents couldn't pay household bills. The scandal was so severe that the entire Dutch cabinet resigned in January 2021, the first Dutch government to fall in decades, directly attributing the resignation to what became known as the child care benefits scandal. All right, so now let's talk about why. Because these failures weren't random. They followed predictable patterns that computer scientists and ethicists had actually warned about years before governments deployed these systems. Most government AI systems are what researchers call black boxes. The model takes in inputs, your income history, your postcode, your age, and produces an output, approved or denied, high risk or low risk. But the pathway between input and output, the actual reasoning, is completely opaque. Even the engineers who built the system often can't explain why it made a specific decision about a specific person. This creates what legal scholars call the accountability gap. Under traditional administrative law, a citizen has the right to know why a decision was made about them and to challenge it with evidence. An AI system that cannot explain its reasoning breaks that right completely. There's a second failure mode, called distributional shift. A system trained on data from 2010 may perform reasonably in 2012. By 2018, the world has changed. Economic conditions, housing markets, employment patterns. But the model's assumptions haven't. It's still pattern matching against a reality that no longer exists. And there's a third problem, automation bias. When human caseworkers are given an algorithmic recommendation alongside a case file, study after study shows they defer to the algorithm, even when manual review would have led to a different decision. The machine number carries psychological authority that overrides human judgment. So even when there is a human in the loop, the human is effectively rubber stamping the machine. And the people most harmed by algorithmic governance are almost never the people who designed it. 3 failure modes: black box opacity, distributional shift, automation bias, all predicted before deployment, all ignored, all producing real human harm at industrial scale. So now you know the science of why this breaks. Next, what the law does, doesn't, and won't do about it, and why the countries most aggressively deploying these systems are exactly the ones with the weakest legal protections. The European Union took the most aggressive legislative action on this with the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, which came into full force in 2025. It classifies government AI applications in social benefits, law enforcement, and critical infrastructure as high risk, and requires them to meet transparency, accuracy, and human oversight standards before deployment. The United States has no equivalent federal law. There is an executive order on AI, but principles are not law. The Trump administration's approach has been significantly more deregulatory, pulling back federal AI oversight requirements across multiple agencies. China has implemented its own AI regulations, but they focus primarily on content generation and social stability, not on protecting citizens from government algorithmic harm. History has a consistent pattern. Technology is deployed, harm occurs, public scandal forces accountability, laws are written years after the damage is done. The question with AI governance isn't whether this pattern will repeat. It almost certainly will. But here's the thing. Every single one of those scandals came to light because journalists investigated, researchers published, and citizens refused to accept "the system says so" as a final answer. The most powerful check on algorithmic governance isn't a law. It's an informed public that understands how these systems work and refuses to be intimidated by the appearance of mathematical authority. So, the AI that already runs your government. Robodebt, 470,000 false debt notices. The Dutch childcare scandal, 26,000 families destroyed, a cabinet resigned. COMPAS, flagging black defendants at twice the rate. All of it predicted, none of it stopped. All of it ignored until citizens forced the reckoning. The technology is moving faster than the law. The deployments are happening faster than the audits. And the people most harmed are almost always the people with the least political power to push back. But every single one of these scandals came to light because someone refused to accept "the system says so" as a final answer. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe, because next in this series, we go inside the AI systems making medical decisions about your health, and that one hits different. See you there.